Great. Thank you everyone for joining us today at day 2 of Converge and to one of the sessions that personally I'm most excited about, because to Converge isn't about just hearing from Kantata, it's hearing directly from your peers, from our customers who are living the opportunities, the challenges and the need for transformation that we talked about at day 1 of Converge. So as we step into this session, our focus today is on real world experiences. In fact, the whole of Converge today is not just going to be hearing from customers, but it's also going to be bringing to life our vision, our expertise engine that we talked about. So really excited for day 2 of Converge. And what's shifting in the professional services landscape we're going to hear today? How are leaders adapting and thriving in this AI native era? And what can we all learn from the discussion today? As I said, a big part of Converge is our community, it's our customers. This isn't just about product updates, it's real stories. You heard yesterday about the shift from legacy to AI native services, about moving from time-based work to scalable outcome-driven impact. The need not just for agents to automate the way you work, but for transforming how you operate your businesses. This panel is our chance to hear about, well, what's really happening on the ground? How are we learning to adapt, to innovate and change? We're going to hear today from different types of businesses and how they're responding to this, as well as Kantata sharing with you an AI maturity model to help you understand where you are on your journey and perhaps where you need to be in the future. Usual safe harbour rules apply. So I'm thrilled today to be joined not just by one customer, but we've got 3 customers today. So I know it's going to be an exciting and interactive discussion. I'd like to introduce Jill Novosel, who's joining as a partner at West Monroe Partners, Peter Reed, Director of Professional Services at NextThink, Chris Frame joining us, Director of Business Systems at Mariner Innovations. I'm going to let each of the panel members introduce themselves and their companies as we dive a little bit more into the discussion topics. But firstly, I'd like to thank each of you for joining me today. I know from some of our discussions we've had leading up to this conversation, there's really going to be some insightful material that people can learn from. And it's great to be here with a mix of different companies, consulting firms, technology firms, embedded firms, the types of firms that Kantata works with. And each of you, I know, as leaders are going to bring a unique lens, but what probably unites us all is that shared challenge and opportunity of what lies ahead to lead our businesses through what is clearly a period of change and needing to lead that change at speed. As we go through this, I'd encourage anyone in the audience to post anything on the Q&A. If you'd like to ask a member of our panel a question, we'll try and leave some time at the end to go through that. But let's kick off the discussion. What is really shifting in our industry? And to be fair, is the pace fast enough for us to sort of continue to lead and win? This is something I presented at a Leaders in Consulting conference in Europe a couple of months ago, talking about the fact that, as the professional services industry, we often help our customers to innovate. We all probably have an AI practice that we're selling and helping our customers with. But actually, we've been pretty slow to evolve ourselves. We still rely on that human scarcity, selling hours, relying on sort of heroic effort and struggling to scale. But that's shifting and possibly faster than it's ever shifted in this industry. I'm definitely seeing from the customers I talk to new delivery models, AI-led offerings, a real focus on productizing services, moving from selling time to scaling impact. And no doubt AI is a huge part of that. So panel, it'd be great to hear from you, and perhaps you could take a few moments to introduce yourself and your business, but also where do you believe you are on this spectrum and where do you want to be on this spectrum in a year's time? And not just in terms of how you're selling AI to your customers, but importantly, how that's shaping your businesses internally and how you operate. Perhaps Jill, I could start with you and you could introduce West Monroe.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So as Sarah said, my name is Jill Nosel, West Monroe. We are a business and technology consulting firm. I've been there about 20 years, and I think the first 10, I served our clients. In the last 10, I kind of focus on our lead to cash operations, so really trying to operationalize a lot of our processes. I would say from an AI perspective, and as Sarah said, I think it is definitely two-sided, especially with professional services firms. I think, we actually last month hired a new chief AI officer, really focused on driving, right? How do we embed AI in our client delivery as well as from an internal focus perspective? So I think, we are making big steps. And I think one of the things we're trying to do is not just really focus on, the offerings that we're going to that are embedded with AI, but really from an operational perspective of really just trying to make AI not just, something we think about every once in a while, but really embedding it into every single activity and process that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Jill. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself and Next Think?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. So, hello to everyone. Yeah, Peter Reed. I work for NextThink as I'll keep it simple, Director of PS. NextThink's a digital employee experience software company. So we're very SaaS-based now. We've gone through a traditional premise to SaaS migration. AI for us, I think, has been around for probably 2 years. So we've launched within our own product, we've just launched our own new AI-based modules. From a services perspective, I think similar to Jill, we break it into two parts. We break it into customer facing, and then we break it into productivity and efficiency. I think we're doing good on the customer side of things. I think we're playing catch up on the efficiency side of things. Just for context, subscription wise, we're probably a 65-70% subscription based company. So to your question, Sarah, where are we on that journey? I think we've actually come quite far. So we've moved away from legacy time and materials and packages to much more subscription-based services, but we've not defined what the future is and how AI interacts with that. And I'm sure as we discuss, we'll sort of share about some of our wins.
Thanks, Peter. And Chris, do you want to introduce yourself and Mariner Innovations?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Chris Frame, so Director of Business Systems at Mariner Innovations. Mariner is also a technology consulting organization. We primarily work in the healthcare transformation space in Atlantic Canada. And we've launched our own AI transformation initiative this year. So, I was chatting with some of the panelists earlier and shared, we like to think that we're about 15 minutes ahead of our competitors and of our clients. So, we're right in the middle of this transformation with a big focus on, introducing AI into our internal operations and our internal process, and also exploring, how we implement this and leverage this in our service offerings as well.
Thanks, Chris. And I loved that you talked about on the call the other day, sort of that idea of being 15 minutes ahead. I mean, I spoke yesterday on one of the Converge sessions saying I'm a runner, and it feels at the moment that often now we're being asked to run a marathon, but at the speed of a sprint, and we're being asked to sort of change the route as we go. Be interested in, Matt, perhaps, Peter and Jill, your perspective on that. Do you think you're 15 minutes ahead, or where do you think, and what are you doing to make sure that, we've all got to make sure we're ahead of the competition in terms of how we're differentiating with our services and expertise? Maybe Jill, back to you to start with.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things, and I think it's definitely a race, right? And I think one of the things we talk about a lot is that, right now is, our competitors are looking at AI, right? One of the biggest impacts that has is definitely better results for our clients because clients are expecting it, but it also impacts our cost to deliver, right? And so if we're 20 minutes ahead, right, our costs can be lower, we can stay competitive and actually can improve kind of, margin profitability. The other side of that is that if we become 15 minutes behind, right, our competitors can start to do things faster and get more competitive with rates. And if we can't compete, we're either going to start to lose work, or if we are winning the work, it's going to have a significant impact from a margin perspective. So I think this is one of the critical reasons that, making sure that teams from a delivery perspective, especially for the clients, like clients are expecting it, but to be competitive, we have to make sure we're staying in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think Jill nailed it. I think for us at NextThink, we're lucky enough to be in the top right-hand corner as the market leader on Gartner. But staying there is obviously you need to constantly innovate. So, changing a SaaS company it's always a direction change every 6 months. And just from a services aspect, sometimes we launch a subscription service, sometimes we can it after 1 year, just simply because the market's moved on. But I think interesting for us, it's how we now fit AI into that. I think we understand how it's better from a customer perspective, but how do we do it internally? And it feels like 3 months ago, we weren't having the AI conversation from an efficiency point of view. Everyone wasn't quite convinced, was it just task automation? And now there's just been an explosion, and now it's kind of all hands to the pump.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably leads us in to talk a little bit about like what we're seeing in terms of, where are you in that maturity journey? Because I think, as you said, Peter, I think it's not just about what you're selling to your customers, it's your internal processes and how you're doing that to make sure that you can remain competitive and you can remain those sort of 15 minutes ahead. And so I wanted to just take a few minutes to share with the audience how Kantata thinks about, helping customers understand where they are in terms of level of maturity across their business. For a services business, how do I track the maturity of where I am in terms of moving to sort of AI-centric services? Because we've heard a lot about it being it's not just about automation, it's about transformation. And fundamentally, how do we shift how our services are sold, delivered, and how we operate our businesses? And we look at it across sort of three key pillars. So there's sort of AI assistance, which I think, is everyday use of AI across the business. And I'd probably estimate all of us on this call, all of our audience are doing this to some degree. I mean, people are using ChatGPT, Copilot's assistants, gone are the days where I had to write up the meeting notes of, a meeting, AI is helping me achieve that. I think the second pillar is looking at, the systems that are at the heart of our business and the applications that we're using to run our business, and how are those applications like Kantata starting to put AI into the core of those processes and workflows. And I'm starting to see that steadily grow over time. But as we sort of presented yesterday with our big, bold idea around the expertise engine is, how does applications like Kantata actually help you truly transform? And I think to do that, they have to be set up to continuously learn and continuously, optimize your business. Because as we said, this is a journey that's moving fast and we've got to constantly be 15 minutes or more ahead. And then that final pillar, which I think, I see less people really starting to think about, is actually what does this mean in terms of how I'm packaging and selling with AI at the core of my business? Definitely customers I speak to, gone are the days where it's all T&M. I think there's still some T&M left, but most people are fixed fee or some sort of subscription or packaged models. But what I don't think people have really got their head around yet is how do I price that with people and agents? Because actually my agents have a cost, they have a price. How am I sort of packaging my services around that? And before we sort of open it up for a discussion again, I guess just share my view of where I see people are in the industry. I think most people are going fast, but pretty narrow. They're pretty, deep in terms of AI assistants and agents across the business, but they're not always taking that strategic approach. In fact, I listened to an industry webinar last week where they talked about companies that are being what they called AI scalers. And they described it as the organizations that are truly moving beyond that surface level assistants and pilots. They're taking a strategic approach and thinking about how they embed AI in terms of how they deliver their services, how they shape their businesses with AI at the core. And I think, that's the sort of challenge for all of us is how do we track our maturity on that journey and how deep can we go and how fast can we go on that? So I thought it might be quite nice just to launch a poll and hear from customers in terms of where you see yourselves across those, different pillars. Where's your company today on their AI journey? And you can tick one or many of these things. Maybe they all apply, but at the moment, is it purely more around sort of ad hoc, general purpose AI for productivity or specialized tools, or are you really starting to put services at the core of your business, with agents at the core and starting to package and sell based on value and output? So we'll close out that poll, and let's move on to sort of the panel discussion. I'd love to hear from the team, and maybe Peter, I could start with you this time, because I know as a sort of an embedded sort of services business, you talked about renewal rates are more important than ever, but you're having to, I think, grow your revenue without necessarily having to grow your headcount. And where do you see, some of the challenges and opportunities, and where do you see Nexthink on this journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if we take the wins of where we are, our consulting base, PS base, is very technically orientated. They come from a very technical premise-based environment. So I think what we find is a lot of them are very good at talking around the technical pieces, but not so much the business pieces. So if you think of how do you get the most output from or value from Nexthink, it's a journey. So everyone frames it as a customer journey. But how do you articulate that journey? Because every customer's got a different starting point. So we're seeing wins already with a kind of custom-built LLM that helps consultants articulate where customers, what they need to do next on that journey, but do it in a business way, not in a technical way. where we're going to be using it going forward. So I think I mentioned before when we were doing a kind of warm-up session, we invest heavily back in our customers. So we are a services organization that we're not for profit. So do we make a profit? Yeah, we do. But it's about investing in our customers. It's about investing in and protecting our renewals. So AI offers a lot of potential. So we've got a huge expanded customer base from multi-million-dollar enterprises down to very small, SME organizations. And I certainly think the smaller end are the customers that always struggle. And I think they're the ones we have to invest in more to protect the renewals. And that's where our investment is going to be going with AI. And I think that will wrap into an offerings that's offering those same services that we offer to the enterprises, but it's not affordable to the SME environment. But if you put in that agents and you blend that with PS support behind it with an agent, it's a much more palatable cost base to those customers. And I think, again, it's then back to helping protect renewals. And yes, we are challenged next year with a flat headcount, no growth. So 20% growth in revenue, but no headcounts.
Yeah, and there's something I'm hearing from many customers, and I think it's, as you say, how do we leverage AI, where are we driving automation, and how are we packaging and selling our services in different ways. I mean, Jill, you talked about you having to continuously evolve and adapt, probably more and faster than you've ever done before. How are you seeing that evolve in your business, and what are some of the sort of challenges and opportunities that you see?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and I think, as Peter was saying, like from a headcount perspective, I think one of the challenges we're seeing is that, from a, professional services and for most of our industries and companies, it's people-based. And so a lot of our performance metrics are based on the work people do, right? So if it's hours worked or utilization, and a lot of AI, yes, it's the better results, better experience, but it's also, making us more efficient. So one of the challenges is how do we look at our, performance metrics as well to make sure that we're incentivizing the right behavior, but also acknowledging that, hey, people, we had a great discussion that, we had a debate of, is AI something that we should be rewarding? And, we kind of went back and forth, and kind of the outcome was, AI, we need to set the expectation that it's expected. It should be something that people do and not reward, like, oh, you did it, congratulations. Like, we need to really build it from a culture perspective that AI is expected, and then also figure out, like I said, how we manage from a, performance metrics to really kind of set expectations and reward like positive, results that we're seeing.
And how are you doing that, Jill? And I guess you just mentioned you're bringing on a new chief AI officer. Like, was that was obviously a strategic decision, I guess.
Yes, that was one of our biggest strategic decisions. And I think, and some of the stuff, even like right now, it's actually AI week at West Monroe. So we're taking, because we do have, this is part of what we do for clients is a lot of AI work, right? So we're trying to bring it internal, and we have sessions. They are doing a lot of showcasing, right? There's training, right? We all have to have certain trainings around AI from a firm perspective. They're showcasing how we're doing this for clients, which helps not only inspire other clients, but our teams. And even things like some of our internal experts, like, one-on-one, right? So again, some of, looking at our lead to cash process, I set up time with one of our AI experts one-on-one just to start to brainstorm some of those. So it's really making, focused efforts to really bring in AI and focus on it, not only just for, yes, all the new, go to our website, all the AI offerings we're doing, but also, just general client delivery as well as internal operations.
Yeah, and I love that point. In fact, Jill, that sort of feeds into, we talked about yesterday launching this expertise engine, but it was like, how are you amplifying that expertise and how are you sharing that expertise? As you say, I think part of this is about, like, as a services business, traditionally, we're not very good at sharing expertise. It sits in people's heads. But if you can showcase and people can understand, this is what I've done for a customer, that should inspire what we should be doing for the next customer or what we could be doing to innovate next. And I think there's more and more pressure to innovate. And I think, Chris, you talked about the other day, sort of that, again, that need to amplify your abilities across the firm. What is your business doing to sort of to tackle this?
Exactly that. We have talked a lot about the fear around AI and is it going to replace people? And we've taken kind of the approach within Mariner that we really want to highlight how it actually amplifies our ability as consultants to deliver amazing service to our clients. So some of the ways, in I guess, in which we're sharing those stories across the organization, we actually run a weekly all hands call on Fridays for an hour over lunchtime for everyone in the organization. We kind of treat it as a lunch and learn, where there are different speakers every week sharing those use cases, sharing those stories, sharing the things that they've learned. So we share wins, and we share the stumbles along the way too. So we found that almost to be equally as important for our team's learning. But we have really like others have mentioned, set the expectation with our team that you should be looking to leverage AI in your service offerings, and acknowledge that and share it broadly with the team so that we learn from one another, and share those wins.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And as we talk about this, I talk to a lot of customers about how this is changing how we package our services. Maybe Peter, you sort of touched on this, but are any of you doing anything around? There still seems to be a skepticism about outcomes. Like, most people are doing fixed fee or subscription sort of services, but do you think we'll ever reach the stage where we're truly sort of pricing our services based on the value they deliver and the outcomes they deliver? I don't know if any of our panel have a perspective on that they'd like to add.
I think for us, yes, that's been a desired outcome probably for 2 years. I think the challenge is how you price it. I think one of the experiences of what we've had is defining our own value framework. So we've been developing in a market that we've helped shape. So we helped create the quadrant, but we've also learned about what the journey is and how we have to deliver on that. So we don't always have the answers to articulate a value framework. I think we're there now. We're really good on it, and I think that for us is like a precursor to actually defining value-based pricing. So we run metrics like time to first value and things like that, and then you find you're in a conversation about, well, what does value mean to a customer? Because some customers buy it because they really like your product. Others want to do it because they want to do cost reduction. So you have to go through that exercise of agreeing what the language of value actually is, to actually then do value-based pricing. I think we've got a good nail on it, and I think some of the AI metrics that kind of come around is we can take some of that subjectivity away from our outcomes. And I think that's always been the challenge at the minute, is we always say, here's our deliverables, here's what you expect, but actually it's hard to define it in a package. So I think now we are at that point of doing it, and that's probably our leap for 2026 in parallel with the AI work, is to actually do value-based pricing. But it's also convincing sales as well. It's not just on us. It's convincing that this is a leap forward, and you've got to have the ability to actually sell it in that way.
Yes, sell it. And I think customers have got to be open to it. I mean, I've heard some people think, well, actually, customers still like that security if I'm just buying a bunch of hours. Whereas I think, being able to sell it, as you say, being able to measure and sell on value. I don't know whether, Jill, is there, what's West Monroe's, point of that? Are you starting to package or look at how you might change your pricing based on demonstrating, the value you're delivering to customers?
Yeah, I think from a price perspective, I think value-based pricing. So, we've been, to your point, I think 10 years ago, we got rid of T&M to fixed fee. And I think now from a pricing, we're trying to, price on value. And a lot of the work we do for our clients, it's cost savings. So it's easier to kind of price based on, hey, we'll take 10% of all the savings you get and get more creative around that perspective. But I think a lot of it, from the pricing, it's just, we're trying to be more creative with our pricing too, and figuring out, the quality perspective, right? And so with AI, some of the benefits is, we should be able to speed up some of the results we're able to give to our clients. And so from a pricing perspective, we'll sometimes put, like a success fee and say, hey, if we can get this done 2 months faster than you need it, here's an additional pricing. So I think from a pricing perspective, we're really finding that some more of the creativeness that we're having from a pricing perspective, getting the buy-in from the client as well, that, we're confident and we're the value we're able to provide to you. And as a result, and yes, a lot of that's, because of AI, we're able to, make more of those, promises to the client and value to the client. And it's really starting to shift how we're pricing and engaging with our clients around just pricing discussions in general.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's a shift in the market. Like you've got to show more than ever that you can deliver it to cost, to budget. It's more competitive than ever to demonstrate your unique expertise and how that enables you to deliver better than the competition and more value. Chris, anything to add that in terms of what you're doing, in terms of maybe how it's shaping how you package and sell your services?
Yeah, I think, I'd share that we definitely have a challenge in this space, given how our clients procure services. It's very structured, very strict, and a lot of our conversation right now is really around, the acceptance of AI as part of the delivery. So, we're still very much focused on time and materials as kind of dictated by our clients. So we're having those early conversations with them. But it's something that we expect to see shift, over the coming months, maybe years, as our clients, accept the tools and the technology. And where we're focusing our time, internally, is enabling our team to be out there, amplifying their impact and demonstrating the value that AI brings to our service offerings with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And actually, I was at a customer event in Manchester last week in the UK, and there was definitely a mixture of customer, depending on what industry you're serving. I think there was a lot of customers that were saying, actually, it's really hard in our industry because it's security or it's governance, government, and it's like actually quite hard to leverage some of the AI technology. I think that will change, but it's clear, I think there's definitely going to be different sectors that probably move quicker than others. Well, let's move on, because I know we could talk for hours, but I wanted to dive a little bit more into this idea of sort of, I guess, breaking that headcount habit, because we've always traditionally, talked about we grow our revenue with our headcount, and we've heard from Peter and Chris and Jill, and I think I hear from everyone, well, that's no longer the truth. I need to look at how I'm growing my revenue, but how am I making it more efficient? I still want experts and people in the business, but how I'm changing that. I mean, I think there was a quote from SPI yesterday who spoke at our conference, said 89% of services leaders say their future growth depends more on how they scale AI than how they scale headcount. Be interested to think about, like, and how's that changing maybe the roles or the skills that you need in the business? I mean, Jill, you talked about that idea of, it's expected now. Again, I think there was in the news recently, Accenture laying off employees, that are unable to adapt to AI and focusing on, really upskilling the workforce. So how important are your people still in your business and the skills, and how do you see that changing and the roles changing over time? Maybe Chris, start with you. Any thoughts from Mariner's perspective?
Absolutely. People are still critical to the work that we do, but it is changing the role, of team members. So, the approach we've taken is, we are not replacing people with AI agents, but there is some key skill sets that we expect our team to adopt, and we expect them to adopt a way of working. And if they're not interested in that, there is kind of some self-selection that will happen. So, we've also talked about rebranding every role within the organization as, an AI-powered business analyst or an AI-powered developer, to really demonstrate to the organization that this is an expectation, across every role. So, we see the future of hiring, team members who are keen to leverage AI, keen to think critically, keen to learn, and use AI as their multiplier or their amplifier.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. And I think that idea of AI-powered roles, one of the challenges I still think we face is, though, that traditional pyramid where we could perhaps bring in lots of graduates, or I learned to be a consultant over years. I joined Oracle, I became a consultant, I learned lots of skills along the way. But how do you see your sort of maybe traditional pyramid changing, Jill, at West Monroe?
Yeah, I think it's, the way we kind of define it, it's, AI is not replacing, our people, but it is reshaping, right? It's reshaping the industry, it's reshaping what we do. And I think, the thing with AI, it's a tool, but it won't replace from a person perspective. There's still, I think all of us have put something in ChatGPT and gotten an answer back and said, no, that's not even close, right? Like there's still judgment, there's still humans who have to kind of interpret those answers and use it. And I think professional services is still a people business, right? A huge part of what we do, right? I mean, Sarah and I met years ago, right? When she was actually, selling back then Kimball, right? To our firm, like it's a people business. So I think that's really the challenge is how do you incorporate, right? And we never say the word replace, but it's how do you incorporate? And those skills are different. And I think, yes, from a model perspective, and, we're a typical consulting, we go out to campus hires and do that. And so, the model isn't shifting so much, but, to what Chris was saying, like the roles are changing, right? We're not having the analysts who take the meeting notes and do all that stuff. So it's, the pyramid it's shifting a little bit, but it's really more focused on the roles and expectations.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. What are you seeing, Peter, in your business and the sort of roles and how they're shaping with AI?
Yeah, I think to Jill's point, it's not replace, it's evolve. It is an evolution. So if you consider we've got, 160 people in our team. So let's say 10 of those are Mac OS PowerShell scripters. So AI can naturally do a hell of a lot of that, but we still need people to do the QA. So over time, are those developers still going to be developing? Yeah, they'll still be with Nexi, but they're going to be system prompt people. They're going to be agent developers. They will still be with the business, but their role has evolved into doing something different and much more still customer focused. I think Jill touched on a good point about you still need the people. And I think the best way our chief AI person described AI to me was it's like having a bunch of interns. You know, they're great. It's body, it does a lot of the automation, but you still need that human touch behind it. So I think it's going to be for a lot of our roles. I think, I touched on at the start, we're evolving our team and our capability, and AI helps them do that to move from a technology to a business focus in their approach and give guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think it's, as you say, it's how we evolving, but we need to be continuously evolving. And how we building, we talked a lot about, again, expertise. I think at the end, it's expertise, whether expertise comes from people, from what you deliver, from your agents, but it's how we continuously learning from that expertise, because that's what's going to fuel us to go faster, to figure out how do we do this quicker than the competition, how do we do it better, how do we deliver value faster to our customers. I know we're going to be approaching time soon. So our last topic area was to really think about the metrics that we run our businesses by, because traditionally we've always looked at headcount, utilization, etc., and revenue and margin. But how do you see some of those metrics changing in your business? What's your scorecard that you're going to use to sort of track your business and how it's evolving with AI? Maybe Peter, I could start with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, every single one of these as they are today resonates perfectly, because that's exactly what we're doing. Billable utilization, productivity utilization. In fairness, we've not overly looked at how it augments with AI, because I think we're still feeling our way into that. If you go back to that maturity slide you've got, yeah, we're very good in column 1. We're very good, I think, halfway down, further than down, probably you're highlighting in column 2. But I think from an agent point of view, from how we embed that into an offerings, I think that is where we need to focus. So from a margin perspective, again, we don't care about margin. We do from a neutrality, because that's what we're measured at, but everything is investing back into the business. I think we do need to measure skills. So just for example, we've launched a company-wide AI initiative this week to do training across the whole of our 1,000 employees. So everyone is at least understanding the language and things like that. So expertise yield, as you show on the slide here, I think is going to be super important. But again, the other ones like time to value, I think it's what are we measuring and how are we measuring it? Because it's that subjective thing. As we move to an outcome-based approach, customer A may just buy it because we've solved the one fundamental problem for them, and they're happy, they're seeing value. Whereas a customer, a traditional federal customer, you may have to jump through 20 hoops to see that same point of view. So I think for us personally at NextThink, it's to be defined.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? How are you changing some of the metrics that you're going to track and report in your business?
Well, AI is certainly causing lots of conversation in this space. We are, still, I would say, kind of the traditional model, very focused on, billable hours, billable utilization. But with the introduction of AI tools, like we're quickly finding, team members are moving faster. So it really brings that, things like time to value to the forefront. And where we're kind of measuring things today is really around adoption. So how are people leveraging AI? What are they doing? How frequently? So I would see over the next year a big shift for us into things like that AI augmented utilization. But where we are currently is still kind of on the edge of that traditional model, about to make that shift.
Yeah. Jill, what about you? How's your business evolving their scorecard for the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we're doing initially is that, from our opportunities from a client delivery perspective, we're tracking where AI is being proposed or included in the delivery. And then from there, we're able to flow that through from the sales perspective to revenue, all the way through like our client satisfaction scores, right? So now we can start to say, hey, of the client satisfaction scores we got in this last quarter, we can compare the results if we used AI and if we didn't, right? We can look at the margin if we had AI and if we didn't. So, for us, the first step is really making sure that we're identifying early in the process the role of AI from a sales and delivery perspective, so we can then update, even like revenue, all of that, margin, we can kind of start to compare AI and not AI, because that really helps, to your point, understand and help make the business case of why we should be continuing to invest in AI within the business.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Jill, that I think an AI offers the opportunity to connect sort of additional data sources we didn't have before. Like as you said, sentiment data, actually, what was the experience of the customer? That I think is ultimately what we all want to track. We're going to have to wrap up shortly. I know we've only got, I think, 4 minutes left. So maybe we could just have a final word from each of our panel members in terms of, on the slide is really, what Kantata thinks is important in terms of, some of the key takeaways, and thinking about it much more around sort of how I'm transforming my business with AI. But perhaps each of you could share something you've learned along the way or a key takeaway for the audience. Jill, perhaps you could go first on this one.
Sure. And I think we've talked about a lot, but I think it really goes back to the fact that we really have to be focused on embedding it in everything we do, right? Having like a one session, oh, this is great. But if you can't really embed it, like the opportunities, right, from a performance metrics, if you just treat it as a standalone, it's going to be really hard to be successful, but you really have to incorporate it into your day-to-day operations. Metrics, results, everything has to be focused around AI from every role in that company, not just delivery, just not internal, but really a firm-wide kind of company approach. I think that's what's helping us be so successful in this area.
Thank you, Jill. Peter, would you like to add some thoughts?
Yeah, I think very similar. I think for us, it's don't go silo. It's got to be a company-wide initiative. So we were lucky enough last week to have a company-wide LLM based on OpenAI. So it's our first foray at a company-wide level, and we've been lucky enough that we've got a little team called the AI Eagles, and it's 15% of the people in the company, of the employees, that are interested in being in that team and using AI, and they're sharing and collaborating. So for us, it's don't do it in silo, don't do it within PS. It's got to have a wider initiative, I think, across the business.
Absolutely, Peter. I love that idea of the AI Eagles. I think we'll adopt that one. Chris, anything you'd like to add?
I think I'd echo, what Peter and Jill have shared as well. We have AI champions embedded in every team across the organization, really there as cheerleaders and support. And I'd also, mention, some feedback and things that I'm hearing kind of from the team is this journey is a little bit overwhelming. The pace of change in this space is very rapid. So things that weren't possible last week are possible today. And, that kind of constant, growth, constant learning, constant change, is something to be aware of with your team. And, thinking about how you support them in that journey. It's kind of a new way of working for a lot of team members, and it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we need to remind ourselves of that. I think you're right. It's exciting, but it can be overwhelming. And how do we sort of manage that with our teams? Well, I think we're just going to finish with a couple of things, but it'd be great to hear from the audience in terms of what are some of the key blockers that, again, you're seeing in your business. So perhaps you could take a minute just to answer this poll, whether it's data and knowledge, people and skills, actually you're just stuck in the old ways of working, or what is it, trust and risk, or is it a combination of these things? So I think we've sort of touched on all of these things during the discussion today. So, thank you for taking the time to complete the poll. And I'd like to just finish with thank you to, our panel members, to Peter, Chris and Jill. I know our customers really value hearing from other customers. And I think, really appreciate, I know your days are very busy, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and thoughts with all of our customers. So thank you for joining. Quick reminder for everyone, don't miss the next session. The next session, everyone heard hopefully yesterday, Kantata launched our expertise engine. It's something that's going to change the way that you operate your businesses and how we work. It's innovative, it's thought leadership, and I think we're now going to bring that to life in the next session. And you're going to see in a 30-minute session a live demo, as well as hear from one of our customers that's working as a beta customer on this. So looking forward to everyone joining our next session. Again, reminder in terms of being able to access the SPI benchmark surveys. And finally, obviously, remember that our community is out there. Converge is about, bringing together our community. And obviously, please do leverage the Kantata community as well to continue to have some of these discussions and build those relationships across the community. But I think we're at time, and I've only got a few minutes for people to have a break to the next session. Again, thank you, Chris, Peter and Jill. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.